Hello everyone, it's your casual gamer Meep here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, the public test build, also known as the PTB for patch 5.4.0 went up. This chapter features a return to normalcy for most chapter releases, and that is, for it we get a survivor, a killer, and a brand new map to go along with them. The survivor is Jonah Vasquez, a mathematical genius, and just like every survivor, he has 3 unique teachable perks. The first is corrective action. You start the trial with a number of tokens from 1 to 3 based off its tier, and you're also able to earn tokens with great skill checks, up to 5 at any given point. Whenever you're performing cooperative action with another survivor, if that survivor fails a skill check, a token is consumed, making their missed skill check into a good skill check. His next perk is Overcome, which is a new exhaustion perk. Whenever you get hit with an attack, the sprint burst you get from the attack is increased by up to 2 seconds, after which the perk goes on a cooldown for up to 60 seconds, down to 40 seconds at tier 3. With Jonah, he's also introducing a new boon totem perk, and that is Boon Exponential. Any survivor within 24 meters of this boon totem will be able to recover 90% up to 100% faster in the dying state, and you'll also be able to pick yourself up from the dying state as well. Overall though, for his perks like corrective action, it's basically a third-person technician without the penalties of missed skill checks. I think if you as a veteran player want to play with your friends who just bought the game, then this would be a great support perk to use in order to help ease them into being able to hit their skill checks. Otherwise, it might be a good solo queue perk, because I'm sure at some time we've all had a teammate miss a skill check at an important time, like when the killer is coming to kick the generator that is almost done working, or you're almost done healing. Overcome makes sense as an exhaustion perk, but I think it should be really 3 seconds in duration to be consistent with the majority of other exhaustion perks. But I still think that players are going to choose Dead Hard over it. In most situations, players will choose to stay injured, and with Dead Hard you can use it multiple times while injured, unlike Overcome for instance. This perk also more or less requires you to be healthy in order to gain the speed boost, because otherwise if you're injured, then the next hit, with a few exceptions like if you have the endurance status effect, will simply just knock you down with the perk activating on the floor. Plus with Dead Hard you can also control when you activate it, unlike Overcome, but I'm glad to see its effects as an exhaustion perk being brought into the game, because I've always wondered why haven't they done something to increase the amount of movement that you get when being hit by a killer. As for Boon Exponential, I predicted that they would create something like this Boon Unbreakable after seeing the powerful effects of Circle of Healing and also Shadow Step. Unlike the other 2 Boon Totem perks though, I don't think this will make its way into the meta because the other 2 Boon Totems give you effects that keep you alive longer, whereas Boon Exponential relies on you going down into the dying state. Also, unlike Circle of Healing and Shadow Step, Exponential relies on the killer to slugging you long enough for you to fully recover from the dying state, even if it is at double the normal recovery speed. Overall though, his perks are very interesting takes on existing perks and mechanics, and I'm also going to be very interested to see what kind of builds players are able to put together, both in the PTB and also post-PTB. When it comes to our killer, however, it is the Artist, otherwise known as the Bird Lady, that I think the community will be giving her nickname as. Her lore is based off of a sadness and grief involving her family, similar to the Spirit. But it's not just that, it's also her passion for the arts, including painting and poetry. At one point, she had attempted suicide, only to be saved by the creatures her power is related to, and that is the crows. The crows saved her mentally from her suicide attempt, and would return later on in life in order to protect her. Her current appearance is attributed to her being assaulted, so she could no longer create her art. Her arms were chopped off, and so she could no longer paint, and her tongue was ripped out so she couldn't recite any more poems. Upon unleashing a wicked screech into the air of both pain and suffering, the crows returned to her side, and without mercy attacked her assailant. After which the fog of the entity then engulfed her and brought her to the trials. The Artist also comes with 3 unique teachable perks as well. The first one is Grim Embrace. Each time you hook a survivor for the first time you gain a token. When you reach 4 tokens, however, the perk activates, blocking all generators on the map for up to 30 seconds, and the Obsession's aura is also revealed to you for up to 4 seconds as well. With the Artist, we're also getting a new Scourge Hook perk. This one is Pain Resonance. Whenever a survivor is hooked on one of the 4 Scourge Hooks that spawn on the trial, the generator with the most amount of progress will instantly regress by 15%, and it'll keep progressing if no survivors are working on it. If, however, survivors are working on that generator when it goes to explode, then they will scream, revealing their location to you. Her last perk is kind of interesting, and it's Hex Pentimento, a hex that thrives on destruction more or less. Broken totem locations are revealed to you, and going to a destroyed hex totem, you'll be able to rekindle and recreate a rekindled hex totem that acts as a token for this perk. For 1 token, survivors suffer a 20% action penalty towards repairing generators, 2 tokens decreases a survivor's healing speed by 20%, 3 tokens reduce the recovery speed of survivors in the dying state, 4 tokens decrease the opening speed of exit gates by 20%, and at 5 tokens, however, all rekindle totems are blocked by the entity, meaning that survivors won't be able to destroy any of them because If you destroy one of these rekindled totems, then it's completely removed by the entity. These perks are overall pretty creative, at the very least to say. Grim Embrace is on the verge of being a great perk, because what holds it back is that it only is able to activate one time after you've hooked everyone at least once. Also, the 4 seconds of the session reveal is kind of weak and should also probably last the entire duration of the gen blocking effect as well, which is up to 30 seconds at tier 3. If you could activate it twice by getting 4 hooks each time, then it would probably be more worthwhile running. It's the 5th gen blocking perk a killer has, so I'm looking forward to seeing that niche build using Grim Embrace. I think though that they could also just lower the token requirements needed to activate it, such as taking it from 4 tokens to activate it down to 2, which would be a good quality of life change to it overall. Especially because in some games you have one survivor that you just never find until the very end of it, and if all the generators are powered, then this perk is useless overall. Out of her perks, Scourge Hook Pain Resonance is probably my favorite one because I like when perks reward you as a killer for hooking survivors multiple times, because that is your job more or less as a killer, and 15% is a decent chunk of progress removed from a generator. 15% can also mean the difference between you getting to a generator after hooking someone and then popping it with Hex Goes the Weasel, or letting her regress with Hex Ruin. I can easily see this perk making it into the meta, especially for slower killers and M1 killers who aren't able to traverse the map as effectively as high mobility killers. I can see this perk being combined with the other Scourge Hook, but I wonder though if it'll create 8 Scourge Hooks, or 4 of them will combine their effects into one, like with Boon Totems for instance, if you equip multiple Boon perks. Hex Pentimento on the other hand though, is very strong on paper, but on its own, this perk almost exclusively puts all of its power in the survivor's hands because they have to cleanse the totems for you just to get the opportunity to earn tokens to build it up effectively. If they don't cleanse any totems however, especially when Boon Totems are in the meta, this basically just outright discourages cleansing altogether, so this perk can't really be used. This perk seemingly almost requires you to run an entire Hex build to force survivors to cleanse the totems, and that's if they don't have the option to simply bless them with Boon Totems. Like, I think this perk is coming out beyond its meaningful times in terms of the meta because of the Boon Totems, but with that being said, if you can get it to work, it provides a very powerful effect, like Devour Hope for instance. I think to fix Pentimento, they should remove the 5th token and make it so Rekindle Totem is blocked by the entity for the entire duration of the trial as is. To offset that buff, however, though, they should also reorder the effects you get from it. To offset the buff, though, I think they should reorder the effects you get from it, because at token 1 with 20% reduced generator repair speeds, that's a really strong effect and will have survivors scrambling to find the totem as soon as possible. For effects, I think it should go from 1 to 4 tokens in this particular order. You get the increased open exegate time so the survivors won't immediately know that you have the perk. Then you go for recovery speed, which isn't really as impactful or powerful. Then healing speeds, you basically have like Sloppy Butcher more or less, in a sense. And then at the 4th token, you should get the generator repair speed debuff. This way the effects would be less noticeable over time, and you'll have an easier time building it up without the survivors noticing it in the beginning. As for the artist's power, it's relatively easy to explain. Her power is Birds of Torment. Whenever you press and hold the power button, otherwise known as the M2 on your mouse and keyboard if you're a PC, you'll slow your movement speed down and a forward trail will appear before you. Pressing the M1 while using your power will instead summon a Dire Crow, of which you can summon up to 3 at default, as indicated by your power bar in the bottom left-hand corner. After summoning 1 or multiple Dire Crows, you can press the Activate button, which is the control button for mouse and keyboard, and send the Dire Crows in the direction of the trail you summoned, which is also known as their flight path. If you have multiple Dire Crows out at once, then all of them will travel their flight path simultaneously together. There is a slight delay between when you're summoning the crows and when you're able to activate them though, so just be warned about that. Also, there is a recharge period between it, so you can't just like instantly spam it over and over again, so yeah, just be warned. If when you go to use a Dire Crow, if a survivor is within their flight path of that little trail that you see whenever you first send them out, the Dire Crows will deal damage to any survivor, meaning they can be used to injure and down survivors ultimately. Beyond their flight path, however, if the crows fly over a survivor, then it will cause them to swarm that survivor, and the crows will reveal their location to the artist. So basically, you'll kind of get like wall hacks because with the crows, you'll be able to see the crow's aura rather than the survivors, and so you'll have an approximate knowledge of where that survivor is. There's also a brief reveal of this with the killer instinct to notify the artist that the crows even found a survivor in the first place, which I think is nice. Crows that swarm a survivor can be repelled by the survivor with a progress bar. You can also repel the crows by entering a locker as well. Also, if you go to use a window or pallet in chase while you're being attacked by the crows, then the repel action is reset progress-wise and you'll need to restart. As a survivor though, if a Dire Crow is idle and hasn't taken flight yet, If you go and run into it instead of taking damage, you'll be prompted to repel the crows instead, which can be used effectively in order to like decrease the threat of them. Her power, I think, will require a lot of thoughtfulness by knowing survivor pathing and being able to precisely tell when to activate your Dire Crow so that it can deal the most amount of damage out on the survivor. And from a tier list perspective, I think she's going to be the mid-B tier range, but I can easily see her having a high skill cap to her power as well, so she can get up there in A tier probably, especially when you start adding add-ons to her. Probably the best way to use her is setting up the Dire Crows that loops the bottleneck survivors, especially into like narrow passageway, or lock them into vaulting animations more or less. The crows will also allow her to patrol generators more easily by sending them out in swarms, so you'll be able to know which ones are being worked on and which ones aren't being worked on, especially when they do or they don't give you the Killer Instinct notification. Overall though, I think she's a really unique inclusion into Dead by Daylight, and I'm excited to welcome her into the list of killers that we have here currently. Don't think that I forgot about her Mori, I just wanted to save it for the very end. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and if you learned something new or enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like as it greatly helps the channel be promoted by YouTube, and if you're feeling generous, consider subscribing to the channel for more content. I'm Meekless3, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.